I want to try something. I want to flip Twilight. Let's imagine Edward is the protagonist. Edward is the one who is torn. On one side there's Bella, the human girl who presents everything fragile and temporary. On the other side, someone from his world. Another immortal. Someone who understands what he is in a way Bella never fully can. For 4 books, Edward is unable to choose. How do you feel about that story? I'm guessing significantly less interested. And there's a reason. Love triangles are one of the most complained about tropes in popular culture, but also one of the most consumed. And the thing nobody is really saying out loud is that they almost exclusively work when a woman is at the center. Is this because audiences are biased or writers are lazy? Not entirely. The love triangle as we know it was built specifically for and around the female experience. It is a female gaze invention. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Okay, I need to give you a little vocabulary lesson before we go further, and I promise it's going to click immediately because you've felt both of these things even if you've never had words for them. You've probably heard of male and female gaze. Film theorist Laura Mulvey coined the term the male gaze in 1975. The core idea is that mainstream storytelling has historically been constructed from the perspective of a heterosexual male viewer. In those stories, women exist primarily to be looked at and desired. They are the prize. They don't have the gaze, they are the gazed upon. The female gaze is the counter, but it is not simply the reverse. It's not just, now women get to ogle men. The female gaze is fundamentally about interiority. It centers a woman's inner life, her desires and conflicts, rather than her appearance. Under the female gaze, the woman isn't a prize to be won but a person making a choice. We're inside her experience, not outside it. Here is the clearest, most concrete example of this difference that I can give you. The first Twilight film, directed by Catherine Hardwicke, a woman, was noted by critics for something unusual. The camera was obsessed with Edward Cullen's face, hands, and expressions. How he looked at Bella. The film was interested in how Bella experienced Edward, what it felt like to be in a room with him. That is the female gaze. Then New Moon came out, directed by a man, and suddenly we had extended, lingering shots of Taylor Lautner's abs in the rain. Both films are technically showing attractive bodies. But one is about feeling. The other is about looking. One is inside the experience. The other is outside it. They feel completely different, and if you've seen both, you know exactly what I mean. Even if you haven't seen the Twilight movies, you get the picture I'm trying to communicate. The love triangle, when it works, is always about interiority. It is never actually about which guy is hotter. It's about what a woman wants, and what that wanting reveals about who she is. That trope has been written, almost exclusively, for women and by women. And we're going to get into exactly why. Here is the thing people consistently get wrong about love triangles. They treat them like they're about romance. Like the central question is, which guy is better? That is not, and has never been the question. Think of the love triangle as a self-discovery machine. The two love interests represent two possible futures. Two different answers to the question, who are you really and what do you actually want? Let's go through this. Team Edward versus Team Jacob was an argument about two visions of love, not simply a vampire versus werewolf romance. Edward represents permanence, intensity, and a devotion so total it will literally freeze you in time forever. Jacob represents warmth, life, change, humanity, the world Bella would have had if none of this happened. Choosing between them can't be distilled to a simple romantic preference. It's an identity referendum. Let's move away from the Twilight universe for a second. In Never Have I Ever, Debbie's choice between Paxton and Ben is a choice between the girl she thinks she should want to be, the one who lands the hot, popular, unattainable guy as proof she's worth something, and the relationship that actually sees her, that challenges her. Sure, it's a teen romance dilemma, but it is also kind of like a therapy session dressed up in a high school setting. Every great love triangle with a female protagonist works this way. The two love interests are mirrors. They reflect something essential about the protagonist that she and the audience is still in the process of figuring out. And that structure demands genuine interiority. It requires the story to live inside her experience. That is the female gaze doing its work.
Now,
Here is what happens when you flip it. Ross Geller. Ross Geller spent 10 seasons of Friends in various configurations of romantic confusion. Rachel, Emily, Elizabeth, Mona, and then circling back to Rachel again. The Rachel-Ross love story is one of the most watched romantic arcs in television history. And when Ross is torn, when he is the one in the middle of competing romantic feelings, nobody goes online and debates what Ross's inability to choose reveals about his inner life. They just find him annoying. Were you ever Team Ross?
no.
Nobody was Team Ross. Think about the Emily situation. Ross marries Emily, a woman he's known for a few months, says Rachel's name at the altar, and then spends the next stretch of episodes trying to hold both relationships together simultaneously. This is, structurally, a love triangle. A man genuinely torn between a wife and the woman he actually loves. Classic setup. And yet the audience's overwhelming response was not empathy for Ross's romantic conflict. It was secondhand embarrassment and mild contempt. It's because the story doesn't give Ross permission to be genuinely lost in his own romantic confusion the way it would give a female protagonist. His indecision reads as weakness and selfishness. It feels like a character flaw to be overcome, not as a rich interior experience to be understood. Without the female gaze doing its work, the triangle doesn't function. It just irritates. Let's revisit the hypothetical inverted Twilight love triangle I mentioned in the beginning. When Bella is torn, we feel the weight of both options because we understand what each one costs her. Choosing Edward costs her humanity, her family, her mortality, and every ordinary future she might have had. Choosing Jacob may offer her a warm and simple human life, but it costs her a chance of immortality, which she really wants for some reason. Every page she spends unable to choose, we feel what she stands to lose either way. Her confusion is not a flaw in the story. Her confusion is the story. When Edward is torn, we'd need the narrative to turn inward and ask what Edward wants for himself, what each option reveals about who Edward is at his core. And that is not a story the Twilight universe was ever built to tell, or any franchise I can think of for that matter. Edward, for all his screen presence and dramatic cheekbones, is a mirror. He exists to reflect something back at Bella, and through Bella, at us. And this is exactly what I mean when I say the love triangle is a female gaze invention. It was constructed organically over decades of female authors writing female experience to answer the specific question, what does she want, and what does her wanting reveal about her? A man who doesn't know what he wants romantically is, culturally, weak and unserious. I sounds harsh, but that's the kind of guy you warn your friends about. On the other hand, a woman who doesn't know what she wants romantically is complex. She's growing and finding herself. It's storytelling history, and it has shaped the love triangle into exactly the form we know. Once you know what you're looking for, you see it everywhere. In the film series After, technically there are men competing for Tessa, but Hardin, the male protagonist, is never meaningfully torn. He knows what he wants. He wants Tessa. The other men are obstacles to him, not mirrors. The romantic confusion lives in Tessa and not Hardin. And even then, the story isn't really interested in her interiority. It's interested in Hardin's damage and whether she can fix it. The result is a love triangle that doesn't function as one. It's just jealousy, with extra steps. On to a personal favorite of mine, The Vampire Diaries. I feel like this one worked brilliantly for a while. Stefan represented safety and the choice to hold onto her humanity, while Damon represented the version of Elena she was afraid to become. The triangle was electric because Elena's interiority mattered. The perspective stayed inside her experience. The moment the show started prioritizing the brothers' rivalry over Elena's inner life, asking which brother would win rather than what Elena wanted, the triangle lost its power. The female gaze left the building, and it never fully came back. A more recent love triangle is My Life with the Walter Boys, focused on Jackie, Cole, and Alex. New girl, new town, two brothers. Team Cole versus Team Alex fractured the internet almost immediately. It worked because Jackie was written as someone genuinely in the process of figuring herself out. Cole and Alex weren't some random love interests. They were two different answers to the question of who Jackie was going to become in this completely new chapter of her life. Give the protagonist real interiority. Give the audience something to argue about that is actually about her, and the triangle activates every time. The Summer I Turned Pretty is a masterclass in the love triangle done exactly right, frustrating as it may be. And the reason it works so cleanly is because Conrad and Jeremiah are opposites. They are two completely different emotional experiences that Belly has been living with for years. Conrad is first love, the consuming, impossible, heartbreaking kind. He is the person who made the world feel bigger, and also the person whose emotional unavailability taught Belly, over and over, what it feels like to reach for someone who isn't quite there. Loving Conrad is an exercise in longing and learning to accept distance. Jeremiah, however, is warmth and steadiness, sort of the friend who showed up without being asked. But here's the question haunting the whole triangle, the one the show is smart enough to actually sit with, is what Belly feels for Jeremiah love. Or is it relief? Is choosing safety the same thing as choosing right? Team Conrad versus Team Jeremiah broke the internet because people recognize themselves in the choice. The people who have loved someone they could never quite reach. The people who chose the steady, good option and spent years wondering if longing is supposed to feel the way it used to. Those are personal histories getting projected onto a beach house in Cousins. That is what the female gaze love triangle does at its absolute best. It holds up a mirror and makes the audience's own desires visible to them. That is an extraordinary thing to achieve with a show about teenagers at a summer house. And no male-centered love triangle in mainstream popular culture has come close to doing it the same way, because to do it, you'd need to take a male protagonist's romantic confusion and treat it as something universal and human and worth understanding, rather than a problem, rather than a flaw. I'll briefly talk about challengers now. The gaze is deliberately rotated. Everyone is subject and object at different moments, no fixed perspective, no one person whose interiority dominates. It becomes one of the most formally interesting uses of a structure in years. This worked, but it's a prestige, literary, award circuit film. It is not a story that becomes a Netflix series, sells out bookstores, or inspires shipping wars that last a decade. My point is, the rare exceptions may exist in art house cinema, but the rule lives in mainstream culture. So, what does all of this actually mean? It means the love triangle as a mainstream cultural phenomenon, as the thing that breaks the internet and sells the books and keeps you watching until 2 a.m., is not a universal story. It is a specifically gendered one, built organically over a long time by women for women about women. It works for female protagonists because it was constructed for an audience whose desire and inner life had not been centered in mainstream storytelling for most of recorded history. The love triangle gave women, as readers and viewers, something genuinely unusual: the right to be the subject of their own romantic story, to want two things at once without being a villain, to be lost and have that lostness treated as something that means something rather than something that reflects badly on them. That is not a trivial thing. That is quietly kind of radical. And yes, people complain about love triangles constantly, but the complaining does not stop the consuming. Team Edward and Team Jacob became a global cultural institution. Team Conrad versus Team Jeremiah is happening right now, today, on every platform that exists. Devi's choice between Ben and Paxton sustained 4 seasons of a show in active conversation. The complaints are part of the participation. You do not complain this loudly about something you don't care about. We keep coming back because the triangle, at its best, is not asking which boy you'd choose. It's asking who you'd be if you had to choose. And that question, the question of who you are, what you want, who you're still in the process of becoming, never gets old. It never fully resolves. It is the question every person carries quietly with them for most of their life. The love triangle just has the audacity to dramatize it, put it in a YA novel, and let you argue about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and let's keep the conversation going. Drop your take in the comments. Which love triangle actually broke you? Which side were you on? And do you think a male protagonist could ever carry one of these the way Bella or Katniss or Belly did? I genuinely don't know the answer to that last one. And I'd really like to hear what you think.
See you next time.